Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second budget deliberations for the 24-25 Rochester City School District school year. Tonight's presentation is going to be done by our Deputy of Administration and Supports, Dr. Ruth Turner. We are going to be discussing student supports and operations, transportation, safety and security, facilities, and food services tonight, as well as same process as last night, round robin. Each commissioner will have an opportunity to ask 2 questions with 1 follow-up question, and we will go round robin. I'll start to the right, to the left, left to right. And then that will conclude the second budget deliberations for the Rochester City School District. With that, I'm going to ask our Deputy, again, of Administration and Supports, Dr. Turner. I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you and good evening. Greetings to President Elliott, Vice President LeBron, our board commissioners, Dr. Peluso, and the greater Rochester community. I am Ruth Turner, and I am a proud RCSD graduate and proud to serve as the Deputy Superintendent for Administration and Support. As this might look very familiar to you, this is our newly adopted vision and mission statement to ground us in all the work that we do. And the next slide is our portrait of a graduate for our school district. We are very proud of our strategic plan. Next slide. So just an overview of the departments that fall under administration and supports. And tonight I'll highlight some of the work that we're doing as it pertains to our 24-25 budget. This is our theory of action for our division. We believe that if we integrate student-centered support services and intentionally develop relationships by providing students with joyful, racially just, and restorative climate, and coordinate and align resources for operational efficiencies and continuous improvement, then Rochester City Schools students will be empowered to activate their dreams and unlock their potentials. Again, this will look very familiar to you from our newly adopted strategic plan. This is priority 2, falls under providing healthy, joyful, and inclusive school climate and culture. And these are our goals for the next 5 years that fall under that respected heading. And this is the same goals, just broken over in terms of the matrix that we're trying to meet each year for the next 5 years so that we can reach our goals. And of course, as my counterpart stated yesterday, we are always centering and mindful of our instructional core, and that this alignment ensures that all aspects of our educational systems are working together towards the common goal of improving teaching and learning, and thus improving student outcomes. This is a fairly newly constructed department, our School Climate and Culture department. I'm going to get to the Student Support Services Department later. It's a very, very large department. It is a department that I have for years worked on and developed, and really felt it was important coming back from COVID to really separate school climate and culture and to have an emphasis on that. So some of the work that comes out of the Department of School Climate and Culture includes our restorative practices work. So the 13 FTEs that we have that are coaching the schools and the entire system live in this department, and it is headed by Jessica Nordquist, who's doing an amazing job. And prior to this, she's also been an original member of our Rock Restorative team for many years. But it also includes our new initiative, which is the Restorative Hub, which I'm going to talk about later on. Also, our student voice and agency work that we're doing with each of our schools, along coordinating our community partners to really focus on what is the best way to support our high-need students. And we have many amazing partners that are working with us to do so. Again, the focus primarily coming out of the Department of School Climate and Culture is really looking to decrease out of school time in classes so that we can ensure that students are receiving as much instructional time as they possibly can. So we're looking at alternatives to suspension, implementing restorative practice with fidelity in each of our schools, and working to create a school climate and culture where students, staff, and families want to be a part of and are excited to be a part of, and focusing on re-engagement from suspensions in hopes that we will decrease suspensions for returning students. Also, support meetings for families and community to really connect them to those services that they are in need of. As I mentioned, our restorative hub stands for healing, understanding, and belonging. We started really our launch in October, and to date we have had 215 referrals come through the hub for high-level Tier 3 conflict resolution and restorative mediation. And out of that, I checked my data this morning, we've had 8 students return to the hub, but for different conflict situations. So we are really tracking the data, following up with our participants who have attended mediation at the hub to ensure that those conflicts stayed resolved and that students have the support that they need once they return back to their respective schools. Also, as I mentioned, our Student Support Services Department really aligns with our district vision and mission by providing a continuum of services to meet the various needs of our students and really looking at our students holistically and holistic needs of those students, aimed, of course, to foster students' academic, physical, social, emotional, and college and career development. This is our Student Support Services Department. It is a large department doing very important work. As you can see for yourself, all the way from supporting our school counselors and social workers to our mental health initiatives, also our trauma, illness, and grief team, and our newly formed medical mobile crisis team. So some things that I want to highlight and has a commitment in our budget is that each of our elementary schools will have a full-time school counselor. Also, we are providing very intense mental health services for students in our 811 classes. So in this situation, one social worker will be responsible for supporting an 811 classroom. So that will be a caseload of 16 students. These are oftentimes students who need a lot of social, emotional, and behavior assistance. And we've implemented it this year and have also made the commitment to continue doing so in our budget next year. We are looking at early data. We are very optimistic that this level of support is really working for those population. Also, our implementation of second step social emotional learning curriculum in grades K through 8. Our counselors will be working to make sure that we are implementing this evidence-based social emotional learning curriculum in grades K through 8. And also our Monique Bird Child and Teen Safety Matters curriculum, which is a requirement to align us with Aaron's Law. We are required to teach students safety in grades K through 8 as it pertains to internet safety and things of that sort. This will perfectly align us to meet those requirements under Aaron's Law. In terms of our college and career readiness, we are adopting a new platform. You might be very familiar. For years, we used Naviance, and hasn't quite worked so well after it's been sold over and over again. So we are looking to implement School Links in the coming year. And we are working also with our CTE department because this will also support and capture some of that work in our School Link new platform. Also, college exposure tour for all 9th graders. So our current 8th graders will become 9th graders next year. So we really start the college exposure in 8th grade. For some of you that were with us earlier today, you were able to hear from our students firsthand their 8th grade trip to St. John Fisher and what that exposure meant to them. So next year, 9th graders will also be exposed to various college tours. And they will also have access to Gear Up, which is a college and career readiness partnership that we have. And Gear Up stands for Gaining Early Awareness and Readiness for Undergraduate Programs. It really exposes students to the process of what it would be like to attend college, takes them on college tours, talks about some of those requirements to not only enter college, but also to persist and graduate once they reach college. And also our cohort tracking that we've implemented for the last couple of years, really tracking students in grade 9 through 12 to make sure that They are aware of what credits that they need to obtain, where they might be struggling, to make sure that they have those supports that are needed, and that everybody from teachers, administrators, school counselors are aware of every student by face, how many credits they have and how many credits that they need. Transition to our health services. So we have school-based health centers at East High School, which is done by URMC. We also have Anthony Jordan Health Center at the Franklin campus, and Rochester Regional Health is at school number 9, school 33, Edison, Thurgood Marshall, and Freddie Thomas campus. And in 24-25, we're going to open up URMC School-Based Health Center at Monroe High School, going through the construction process in the next coming months, and they're really excited for this service. These services will be billed to students' insurance, and we are positive that it will not cost anything to the district, but will be able to be sustained through those services that the doctors and mental health professionals will provide as they build the insurance companies for those services. Also, our mental health services, we are in partnership with Liberty Resource. They are currently at school 28, 46, 50, 58, and in 24-25, they will be with School Without Walls, School 25, and Northwest. And Rochester Regional Health, which is currently at School 19, will expand to School of the Arts in 24-25. And University of Rochester will open up at Loretta Johnson School and School number 8. And Villa of Hope in 24-25 will open up at School 22 and Rochester Early College. These clinics are available to students based on referrals from building staff or families or teachers who feel that the students can benefit from a mental health intervention. And again, if they are deemed appropriate for therapy and mental health services, all the services will be billed to students' insurance. Currently, these clinics are available through the support that we have, a grant through the Office of Mental Health, and this is a 4-year grant, and we're optimistic after 4 years, once they built up their clientele, that they will be able to be self-sustained by billing insurance. Also, when we think about early childhood behavioral health, Mount Hope Family Center will be at Rochester Early Childhood Education Center, and also Children's Institute will provide services at School 33 pre-K program. So we are recognizing the need to provide early services to our preschoolers, whether it's the expansion of special ed services or mental health supports for those students. Families have asked for this for a long time, and we're really proud that we have 2 agencies that will focus on the need of our preschool children. Telehealth services, I know we've heard a lot about this. We're really excited about our telehealth expansion, and I get a lot of phone calls about this from many different places, whether they're in New York State School District or out of New York State, really interested in learning more about this. So schools with telehealth equipment. So let me just be clear. Currently, telehealth services are available to any student. The nurse would make that schedule with a technician who could be portable and travel to those schools that do not have the equipment, but schools that currently have a telehealth equipment in their building is school number 4, 15, 16, 17, 19, 22, 34, 42, 50, and 54. And next year, really excited that we're going to pilot in 3 of our schools the behavioral health portion of the telehealth services. So school 5, 12, and 23 will be our pilot schools for mental health telehealth services in the year 24-25. We'll transition to our school safety and security portion. We are going to continue our partnership with the Rochester Police Department to provide coverage and support during arrival and dismissals at Edison, Franklin Campus, Wilson Commencement East, and School of the Arts, and also continue our partnership with Pathways to Peace to provide supports for conflict resolution, gang prevention and intervention services, and re-engagement. And we'll also continue the de-escalation training work that we are doing with all our school safety personnel. In terms of transportation, always looking to provide safe and efficient student transportation. We are also upgrading our routing systems to maximize efficiencies so that we can make sure that we are the best stewards of all the resources that we have. We recognize that we are still experiencing a bus driver shortage, so we are continuously recruiting and making efforts to hire new bus drivers and to also work with our current vendors who provide transportation to ensure that we are maximizing efficiencies as much as we can. Our food service department has been working really, really hard, hearing a lot of feedback, not only from our board, our communities, but our students, the need to enhance the menu choices and options that are available to students. So they've been doing a lot with trying to get feedback and sample some new and exciting menus, and really looking as much as they can with the constraints that we have in terms of our guidelines to provide nutrition, nutritious and healthy food for our students. And that is it. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions from my seat.
Thank you, Dr. Turner. I am going to start to the right, and I believe it is Commissioner Patterson.
Good evening. What supportive data, you mentioned Pathways of Peace, what supportive statistical data or evidence do we have, or do you have to show that indicates that they're a successful vendor?
Thank you for your question. Each of our vendors are responsible for providing us data. We work very closely with them to check that data. And also many of our programs have gone through our program evaluation department. So I can certainly put in a board log and share with you the data that we have for you to be able to review.
Thank you.
And I just want to add to that, that as in our area, currently, Pathways to Peace is really the only individuals, and we are working with SNUG that are doing that direct gang prevention and intervention services. And we have worked over the last couple of years to ensure, right, that we are working alongside with them and ensuring that they are doing work that is beneficial for our students. So over the years, we've gotten better in terms of case managing some of the work that they're doing, but I'll be more than happy, given the time, to share some of that data with you from the board log.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to also acknowledge that our parent rep for the Finance Committee, Deveth, is online, as well as the East EPO Superintendent, Dr. Marlene Blocker, as well as Commissioner Griffin. But I am still going to continue from the right to the left, and so I will end on the Zoom for this first round, and I will acknowledge you guys then. I just want to acknowledge that they are with us as well. Commissioner Santiago, any questions this round? President Elliott, any questions?
Not this round.
Commissioner Simmons, Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Vice President LeBron. Thank you, Deputy Turner, for your presentation this evening. I'm taking a look at all of the things, and we know that there has been such a cry in our community to ensure our children are getting wraparound services to make sure they're ready for school. And so I recognized, as I'm trying to reconcile the budget book and compare and contrast between school profiles, one of the things from the Equity and Student Achievement Committee I try to look for is equity. And so I recognize we have counselors, social workers, help zones, and all of the things that children need to ensure that they are whole. And I so appreciate the efforts that are going into that. And wondering, once our children are whole, how are we, I'm trying to figure out, and I don't even know if you're the one to answer this, but then when I look at the instructional core, I want to reconcile that our children have the same level of support because we're making them whole, and then to what end, to educate them. And so I'm just wondering, how does that feed? Because I do see a disparity there. Like, I want to make sure the services, not that these are not necessary services, I don't want them to get my words, my father said, don't let your words get twisted, because people do that. But how do we make sure that there's the instructional piece that's supporting the children once they get the services? Is that making sense?
Yeah, let me just make sure I'm hearing correctly. I think appreciating the level of social, emotional, or behavioral health that we're providing for students with the aim that they will be present, right, to be able to learn, right, while they're in the classroom. The teaching and learning budget is significantly higher than the budget that we provide for social emotional supports. A lot of it, we write grants and are able to get grant to cover for those services. And I definitely hear you. I think they're complement to each other. And I'll let the superintendent, if he can speak more to that. I don't really see the inequities that perhaps, and that doesn't mean that they're not there. I don't clearly see those.
Yeah, it's a question that we've had and talked about often, right? So it's not, as yesterday when I presented, I talked about finite resources, right? And so where is that happy medium? We knew after COVID, we heard our kids crying out for help, right? At some point in time, we hope that these efforts do baseline that, right? And we're doing other things, telehealth, and what Deputy Turner had mentioned around giving also social emotional health for that, and counseling and that. Hopefully, then we could start to say, okay, as resources become tougher, right? This is not a level of support, but I'm going to put this out there because when I started as a principal, to where we are today, and I've talked to the team about this, so I'm not saying anything that I wouldn't. We've added layers of support for social emotional, right? It came to a point where Superintendent Vargas many years ago went and said every school is going to have a social worker, and we had a half-time social worker. And then we made sure that every school had help zones, and they have in-school suspensions. And now we're adding telehealth, and we're making sure that they have counselors now. We have SSOs in elementary, right? So all of those things are there. At some point in time, yes, we're going to have to say, are we settled to a place now where we have to relieve some of those services, and this is where our investment goes now. But at this point in time, we're still seeing our cry out for our students, and we have to stabilize that as well. So it is a balance, and we're going to have to continue to evaluate that year after year to make sure that we're there.
Yeah, because I think, and so I don't know if inequity is what I want to say, because I don't know how deep, how everything lines up, but I think when I'm comparing the presentation from yesterday, when we're like reading teachers, instructional coaches, and then we have this, I want to make sure that all of the things are feeding so that we meet those, as I said yesterday, the aggressive goals.
And absolutely, and we're talking about additional supports.
Yes. Okay.
Right, because 3,500 teachers are in, and a lot of them are in classrooms with kids every day, and that's where a majority of it is, right? Now you're looking at what's outside of that teacher in that classroom, and what's the supports of that, and where is that balance? And those are things and conversations we continuously should have to say, okay, with the resources you have, where's the spend on that?
Commissioner Malloy.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Just a couple of questions, but we're just doing one at a time. So I'm just wondering, for the med centers that our students have access to, I think it's wonderful. And I love these additions to the district because it means we're starting to address our students' most basic needs. And so I love the fact that we have these available to our students. And I know that my own children have been able to access services as a result of this. This might be more for the question log. I don't know if it can be answered tonight, so I'm not expecting an answer here. But did we use ARP funds to kind of help create this infrastructure? And I just want to know about the sustainability down the road. I know you mentioned that it's all insurance pay or reimbursements. So is it self-sustaining? I'm just concerned that we've created this infrastructure and we're not going to be able to maintain it 3, 4, 5 years from now. And these are legitimate needs that our students have, and we want to make sure that this type of programming continues. So hopefully I was clear enough
From the
there.
telehealth?
Not just that, but any of the medical services
Yep,
that are being
so-
offered in our schools.
Absolutely. So I want to touch base on the telehealth because this is really something that I stood behind a lot, and I've worked with a lot of community partners, and I want everyone to hear on record we had ESL support, we have Wegman support, we have the county support, right, to make this infrastructure there to get this off the ground. And it will be sustainable with billing. The big part of this, and I'm sure Deputy Superintendent Turner is looking at me because she could speak actually to this as her profession, but acute illness and telehealth and medical and labs are treated, and we're able to bill that different than we are with social emotional supports. And we're looking to make sure that those social emotional supports, from a legislative standpoint, are billable so that we're able to move those as well. So I'm sure Deputy Superintendent Turner will fill in anything that I missed there.
This is great to hear.
Yeah, and the grant that we have for 5 years, 4 more years remaining, will also be seed money as, they build the clientele and the billing services so that in 4 years, they will be able to be self-sustaining to keep those going. And we've had health services for many years in some of our schools since the early 90s, 95, I think I remember the earliest one. And they've been self-sufficient all these years. So the grant allows us to have that portion where they'll get, a level of income as they build their clientele and receive money from billing insurance.
I just want to say thank you so much because this really highlights a good use of our funding, and kudos to
And
the
it's
entire
innovative,
administration on
People
that.
are really interested in looking at Rochester as a model to see how this, will play out, and are interested in replicating it in other places.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Griffin?
Yes, hello, everyone. My question is relative to health services and other things that you mentioned. Ms. Turner, how do you determine what schools actually get these health services and amenities that you described that other schools are getting and some are not getting them? How do we do that year to year? Can you please expand on that for me, please?
Sure. So we work with our healthcare providers and look at really a couple essential data. One is they're very aware where the need is in terms of where students are living. And also the other one comes down to what buildings have the space to be able to house a health center. That's why the telehealth, we're so excited about that, because that will not matter whether you have limited space or not. But essentially, when we think about building the infrastructure of a health center, an actual clinic, we look at space, and we also look at the data of the neighborhood, of the students that live there or attend that school, and look at some of those needs with our medical partners.
So, okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Diva, ¿tiene una pregunta? Is she on?
Sí, tengo una pregunta.
Okay.
Aquí estoy tratando de comunicarme con mi intérprete, que ella está en línea también.
Oh, okay. So there's an interpreter on the line. She's trying to communicate with her, so the interpreter can assist her over the Zoom on interpretation. Okay, dale cuando estás ready.
Ok. Mira, yo no me puedo conectar ahora mismo rápido con ella,
Ok,
pero yo te voy a hacer una pregunta.
Haz la pregunta y yo trato de decirlo en inglés si puedo. Pero yo no te lo puedo
Ok,
decir todo para atrás en español, esto es el único problema.
No te preocupes, solo haz la pregunta.
Ok.
Me gustaría saber si los estudiantes recién, ¿verdad? Llegados
Espérate, vamos a empezar otra vez. ¿Tú quieres saber si los estudiantes qué?
Los estudiantes que recién, ¿verdad? Llegaron de otros, ¿verdad? Países.
Ajá. If she wants to
que son
understand the
nuevos.
students who are coming from other countries who are new,
Si ellos están recibiendo la consejería y la asistencia necesaria, ya que muchos de ellos llegaron en, ¿verdad? Circunstancias difíciles.
If the students who are newly arrived from other countries, who are coming from traumatic backgrounds, if they're receiving the counseling and the supports for their transition.
Y
Ajá, sigue,
también
perdona.
también si que hay estudiantes esperando ser evaluados de los recién llegados por educación especial.
And special education services, because there are some who have arrived and been here for a little while who are still waiting for those services. ¿Esa es la pregunta? ¿Lo hice bien?
Sí, lo hiciste
Okay.
bien, gracias.
Okay, gracias.
Okay, so I'll answer the first question first, I guess. So we do offer a lot of our partner agencies. We also have bilingual social workers, primarily Spanish speakers, that are available to make those assessments and connect families to those services that they need. We do work very closely with individuals, primarily from RIA, when it comes to our families that might speak Arabic, families from Somalia and so forth, to engage them in that process. I'm going to be very open, and I've said this to that community. As an East African myself, it's really, really hard to provide mental health services to some of folks with the cultural background, because there's a deep-seated belief that mental health is not really a thing. There's a lot of shame attached to that. So we're really working with individuals who are trusted in that community to try to connect them to those services. While their students are in school, families are more open to it, right? So students, if they're in schools and we're able to connect them with individuals who may speak their language, or they're able to speak, access English-speaking practitioners, but there is a shortage in clinicians, right? Even individuals who speak Spanish, much less of the other languages. So we're really working hard with that. I remember years ago, I would use a translating services, providing therapy to a child. It's really, really difficult to do so, right? And to do it well. So that is something that, as we look at the needs of our newcomers or families who have limited English proficiency, how do we provide those culturally relevant services, especially when it comes to mental health and social emotional supports? In some, as I said, in some communities, we're able to do that through trusted individuals in that, but that is something that we need to work on improving.
I just want to clarify, Dive, tú estás hablando de las familias que llegaron, que empezaron a llegar de México, Guatemala. Esas son las
Sí,
familias, okay.
específicamente de ellos, pero también ya que nosotros trabajamos bilingüe y multilingüe, también de los otros estudiantes de los programas multilingües, pero de los recién llegados a esta comunidad de América Latina, de México, ¿me entiende? De otros países.
Sí, yo le voy a decir que también que diga algo para esa parte, okay?
Sí, por favor.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify, but I wanted to clarify with her. I think she's also speaking to the newly arrived families that have started coming in from New York City specifically. Although they are not all Latinx, a majority of them are. But she also wants to advocate for all the families, but I think she's specifically talking about those individuals. And I think that is sort of a unique situation that we're in this year, and so I guess she's trying to understand what's your eye on the pulse around services for them.
Yeah. So as I said, we do have bilingual social workers. I'm going to primarily focus on Spanish speaking because that is what we currently have. So one of the ways that we approach that is they're doing a lot of work in small group with individuals from similar backgrounds, because oftentimes those services are concentrated in a few schools. I'm going to be very honest. We need consent to provide mental health services, and we don't always get that. So we provide supports through lunch bunch and things of that sort. So that's why I'm talking about the stigma. We still, even in some of our students who are native speakers to English, just really breaking through as I said, the stigma that comes around mental health. We're still not quite there. What we're seeing is our students, when they reach middle school, high school, sort of demand it from the parents, and parents relent usually at that age. So it's a balance. We're doing the best that we can as much as we have parental consent to allow us to do so.
Okay, you want to answer the second part of the IEP?
What was the second part?
The second part of her question was the special education IEP supports for those families and some who are potentially still waiting because they've arrived a little while ago.
Yeah, I'm not clear about that. As I said, if there is a need or there's a referral put in, I mean, we do those as much as we can within the 60-day notice. If we are aware that families might be coming in, whether it's from New York City or another country, and have described to us what might be special ed related, we also follow through with doing those referrals. So we don't necessarily have a pile of, so I would need more details and would love for those families to reach out specifically to us if they feel like they've been waiting for some time to get those services. We're not really hearing that, and Chief Swan does a great job of meeting with the parent groups each month and really getting a pulse of that stuff, and I'll be more than happy if she feels that there's anything else she would like to add to that.
No, está bien por el momento.
Thank you. We actually do track those students and student needs on a monthly basis. We've had some difficulty obtaining records and school information, and we actually just revised our policy that we will wait no longer than 10 days before enrolling a student as an initial referral to the Committee on Special Education, so there isn't a delay for families and children to seek support. So we're watching that very carefully.
I'm going to use my one follow-up question now because, I just want to put out there that especially the families, we already know we're not going to have records for. We know especially the ones who are coming from New York City. INS is actually processing there and then reprocessing here. So we are very familiar what country they're coming from. Where we don't know all the details of the trauma they've endured to get to even New York City, but we do know we're not going to find medical records. They're not coming with records. And so I do want to understand if we can potentially in the future, this is my question, and this can go on the question log. It does not need to be answered tonight, but this is what I'm going to use my one question for. Can we, as a district, look at we already have the information. We work with other partners in this community, including the county and our state partners, and New York City, the partners in New York City around the families that are coming in. Can we, and as someone who has been there to welcome, understand the process up close and personal, can we, even as they're arriving, start identifying at that level so that then the community partner, and it could be the New York Immigration Coalition, they're a phenomenal partner here to provide then the release right then and there as well with families and the identification to the district to say, hey, these students are gonna be coming to you. They may not even get to you for 30 days, but don't expect the records for these students so that when they arrive, this is the plan that you guys should start looking at implementing.
Yeah, and I think you're aware, because I believe you're a part of that group. Each month, we do meet with all the partners and talk through some of those needs. So that is definitely something we certainly can work with them and to try to get as much information as we can. But even in incidents where families are able to describe with us, and Edith and her team does a great job of doing the language assessment and really working to connect them with services in which they're able to explain that maybe they were in a special class or so forth. We also take that information, right, to try to build a profile and see what evaluation or classes that we could offer the students.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Divya, ¿tiene otra pregunta? Que yo voy a empezar en este lado ahora.
Y también quería saber si ya que la cantidad de estudiantes, ¿verdad?, bilingües ha aumentado con esas nuevas familias, si ellos van a seguir teniendo, ¿verdad?, sus maestros y sus asistentes para apoyarles, ¿verdad?, en el aprendizaje del inglés como segundo idioma.
Espérate, mija, que lo dijiste tan rápido, pero yo creo que lo entendí.
Okay.
Okay. She would like to know what instructional supports are in place for the families who have arrived and what the plan is to either not just maintain it, but also outgrow those instructional supports as more families start to arrive. Algo así, ¿verdad?
Sí, que apoyen a las familias y a los estudiantes bilingües, porque ellos como están aprendiendo, pues necesitan más asistencia.
Jaime, perdona, Iglesia va a ayudarme.
No, she wants to know if there's
Alicia.
going to be the support, the teachers and the support staff to support those students and the families that are just arriving to the
Bilingual,
district.
yeah.
Bilingual families.
Yeah, so let me say this because I know that we've had a couple of folks really look at the response of Rochester to our newcomers and some of our asylum seekers. I want to be very clear, we're very proud of the work that we are doing, meeting the immediate need, whether it's helping with clothes to be able to go to school, supplies. Our staff has been there, and I know you've seen it, to ensure that we enroll them as soon as possible. We offer bilingual services and have expanded the programming in many of our schools. So I'm really, really proud of how we've not only welcomed them, but tried to help ease that difficult transition to arriving here. And I'll let my counterpart, if there's anything you want to add to that.
Thank you, Diva, for the question. So we do have our newcomer academies at 515 and School 50, which have staff embedded supports to support students instructionally going to those targeted schools. We also have our newcomer program at Rochester International Academy, where again, the same supports are able to be provided to our students. Next year, we will have sheltered instruction and support for newcomers right at the Jefferson campus as well. So there will be a sharing of some resources for students that may not choose the actual newcomer program, but wants to be with their general ed peers. And yeah, so the Division of Teaching and Learning also is set up now where 3 out of the 5 days a week, they are to be in schools providing support directly to school leaders, to teachers, helping with grade level teams, you name it. It's making sure that we're at the ground level providing the support to the actual folks that are serving our kids right in the classroom. Is that an answer?
Okay. ¿Eso está bien para ti, Dive?
Sí, muchas gracias.
Okay. Commissioner Griffin?
All set.
Commissioner Malloy?
Thank you. This is just regarding food service. Had the pleasure with some of our board peers today to tour the central kitchen, and we got to sample some of the wonderful meals that will be served beginning next year. So that was a really great opportunity. So thank you to food service first and foremost. I know one of the needs that they had indicated to us during this tour was the difficult position that they're often in when people are absent and they don't have a substitute pool. I'm not sure, I couldn't tell from the budget book. Do we have a pool of substitutes to ensure that our students are getting served efficiently? It puts so much of a burden on other workers when there aren't enough people to serve.
Yeah, so we struggle to find those individuals, but we have the resources to support subs, you know, as we're able to find those individuals. The challenge becomes, as he stated, you know, somebody getting called to maybe take a shift one day and not the other, is just as we do with our teaching sub pool, we just really struggle to find individuals who are willing or have the time to do that.
Okay, and I just also am concerned, I want us to always look at whether or not we're fairly paying these individuals moving forward. They really do a heavy lift in this district and should be duly compensated. They often come right from the community and have close relationships with, you know, they know our students. And it's often the first person that a kid will see every day when they go to school. So having those valuable employees is critical as part of meeting our academic goals. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Simmons?
Thank you. Yes, that was a wonderful tour with food services, and I echo those sentiments. I do have a question. So walk this journey with me real quick. Are all of our schools getting Title I funds? All of them will explicitly have Title I funds provided to them?
Some level of it, yes. So
Some.
based on, yes, some level of it goes
Okay.
to schools.
Because I saw that the ARPA dollars, they're ending pretty much, basically, which we knew. And so some of the grants are ending and therefore roles will end, but some of the dollars have found a way to be absorbed into the budget based on a presentation shared a few weeks back. And I'm wondering, like, listening to the exchange and the questions around special education and what have you, do we have, again, I'm going back to the instruction, bilingual coaches, prevention intervention folks, do we have those like adequately diversified among our school communities? Because we have some of the needier communities that sometimes don't have those services.
So there's a couple of things here. There's kind of multi-layered, right?
Okay.
So we've created the baseline of every school to have at least an instructional coach and a reading teacher in K-6 and 7-8 that uses title funds for that, right? There are some schools that don't have enough title funds to even support that.
Okay.
So we used A funds to make sure that we were giving a minimum of requirements. Other schools have additional, what we call rank and serve title funds that go to them that they've purchased other supports like intervention teachers with as well. This is where, if you remember when I was mentioning yesterday, there's no TOAs, like you can't purchase TOAs anymore, right? From that, it has to be all for direct service to kids. There's another bucket of money that's 1003 and 1003B, which comes from two schools based on accountability status. If you look in this budget, that is showing in the grants section as, I believe, a $4 million reduction, and I'm just going off the top of my head. That is because we've typically rolled those monies forwarded and budgeted staff to them. This year, we got kind of burned a little bit. The state upped the money on accountability statuses 2 years ago. And I think basically they had some more federal stimulus funds as well. And then this year, it kind of went scaled back, but we went budgeted on the previous amount, so we had to fill that money gap, and we did that with federal stimulus, if you get what I'm saying. So this year, we're waiting for what the accountability status money is going to be, and from there, schools will be able to purchase an additional intervention prevention teacher and get more services that way. We just haven't pre-budgeted that because we're not positive how much money that will be, and we don't have the latitude in this budget to cover if we give more than what we're anticipating or the money comes in a little bit less. But, so title money's there, and then 1003 money, grant money will come at some point in time where schools will also be able to give and get supports based on what they believe their school's gonna need, based on their accountability status.
Okay, because the journey I'm going down in my brain, and I could be wrong, I'm thinking, how will that impact some of our special education services? Because the needs are there, and then. so
Special,
kind of
I will
related
say,
there.
if you look at our special education budget, we're increasing our special education
Right.
budget.
Yeah.
Dramatically, right? You know, I think the number is, what is it off?
But those roles, the intervention pieces, and so am I tying something that shouldn't be tied to
I
that?
think they're two separate.
Okay.
I think they're two separate.
Okay.
They're two separate. I want
Gotcha.
to be, we need our special ed teachers in the classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Intervention prevention, we've had in the past, provided them the ability to work in roles outside of the classroom. I want to say, I know it doesn't sound fair and it doesn't sound right, but we have a consent decree.
Right.
And we have to limit the ability of our special education certified staff to be outside of classrooms because we're going to get hit with a consent decree for not meeting that metric. So the intervention prevention and special education should not, they're two different two different sources of income, different sources of revenue and expenses.
Well, thank you.
President Elliott, I'm going to ask mines and then I'll turn, because then we probably wrap up. Mines is also related to food services and the 1.5 million that we are pulling from general funds. And I'm very proud of my previous board and President Elliott, who's with us when we could champion to increase the revenue. And I will continue to remind not only this board, but future boards and administrations that the Rochester City School District budget for food services should not only be a self-sustaining budget line, especially in today's economy, especially with inflation, because what ends up happening is our children get the very bottom of the bottom that we can afford, and they should not have to. And so I know that a lot of efforts have been made, especially by Dele and his team, and thank you to them and all food services, to be creative. And certainly I know that they appreciate the 1.5, but I do want us to commit to not only not reducing the 1.5, but looking at even increasing that for next year's, the 25-26, because that was great, a year ago, 2 years ago. It's great to sustain it, but the reality is that the economy right now is not great, and inflation and prices continue to rise, and that then starts becoming and dwindling down to that piece. But I do want to add as well a future additional request, also based on what Commissioner Malloy mentioned. I did not get to go to the tour, but I do know that this is something that food services has also brought forth and sort of bubbled up to previous boards and previous administrations, is this need to have like their own sort of subdivision. And I hear you, Dr. Turner. I was thinking, well, you also have to be food certified, and it's not a hard certification with Safe Serve, but we can't have uncertified people serving food, even on a sub. And that's really hard. You're right. People have to also be able to pay bills and maintain themselves and their families, and they're not going to be able to do that being on call to be a sub 1 day a week for the district or 2 days a week. But so my request is, and I don't even know if this is something that could be looked at and explored for this budget, but I do want to put that portion, the exploration for this year, on the budget book log, is could we create a 2 FTE full-time subs in food services that could be deployed to different schools to lend support when someone does call out. And I would also propose that those 2 positions potentially have a braided type of responsibility and are also Safe Serve certified at different levels even. Because it is, again, to your point, Dr. Turner, really difficult sort of pool to create and pull from. And so I think this is one of those sort of niche areas that we have to be creative and create our own sort of solution ecosystem to that. And I just want to put that out there, and that's the only thing I have tonight. President Elliott.
Thank you, Vice President. So, I know how we can do it. We can just get rid of the FDA program and fund it ourselves. That's what I really would like to be able to do. So, somebody's listening out there, want to give us, 30 million to do this on an annual basis, that we can change all of this. Because the lunch program is a very significant part of the school experience. And many of you heard my experience when I was in elementary school. So I still remember Miss Turner's biscuits. So, we need to look at that. Or to the Vice President's point, if we can add some more funding to it. But I would point out, and this is what I point out now all the time, there are certain regulations that we have to adhere to in terms of what goes into the food. So not a lot of salt. I got salt in my purse, so, but in any event, the question I have is related to the home hospital instruction, and that budget went up about $2 million. And so any reason why that budget went up to
increased about 2 million. It's on page 65 that I'm looking at.
And area profiles.
And I would rant over the charter school thing, but you all know where I stand on that. So.
That's right. And so I do want to say home hospital tutoring had some changes in terms of levels of service and hours of service. And if you look, you'll see an increase in staff. Yep, in order to meet those requirements. And last year, we were dealing with, not really sure and knowing how much that change would impact, right? They doubled the number of hours, so we did double originally. We were planning on doubling the number of people. We've kind of made sure that we adjusted it based on what our actual use is, but that's where that comes from some changes in regulations and regarding the required amount of time that students need to receive home hospital tutoring. That limits the number of caseloads and hours that a teacher could do, so you see increased home hospital tutoring services.
Thank you.
Commissioner Santiago?
Yeah, I do have a question. So we see a rise in funding for social workers, for safety and security, and also mental health services. My question is, as we go into the transition for this upcoming year and this upcoming budget, what are the plans when it comes to the schools that are transitioning, the different schools that will be coming together, and the different students that will be coming together when it comes to our social workers, our mental health services, and safety and security? Like, how much of these services will really be going into the schools specifically that are going into the new model?
Thank you for your question. We have been really intentional to provide those supports. That transition will be difficult. So we put in resources for the Franklin campus with increased number of social workers, counselors, even administrators to help with that transition and to help the needs of that campus. Same thing with our middle school, really looking at how to best support this new model, as some of those students will be leaving their previous school to come to a newly formed middle school, really focusing on that transition and support. So we put in those schools, we put in additional layers of support when it comes to both in administration, in our counselors, social workers, but even as we think about middle school, we're gonna take a huge undertaking around mentorship and financial literacy to support our middle schools, and then looking at beyond what we can provide, what our partners can provide in our new Design Franklin campus around what kind of services and opportunities will be available for students there. We've gotten some feedback from students that are interested in partnership with Monroe Community College around classes around mental health, right? As exposure to what mental health is and possibly to the mental health profession. So we have been very mindful as we built the budget and considering the different circumstances and situations schools as they open up in September will face, and really being mindful of what supports will help them through that transition and to help them start the school year on a positive foot. So we've been very intentional to provide those extra layers of support.
And a quick follow-up, athletics. I'd just like to hear you guys' plans or you guys' thought as we're transferring into the middle and the high school model. How are we pushing athletics as a positive reinforcement for our students?
That was yesterday.
My apologies, that was yesterday.
But we, that question was raised and discussed yesterday. We said that we're going to just kind of put in the next few years in terms of what the plan is for athletics. We're adding 15 programs next year, and then what the rollout is over the next few years.
Yeah, and just a final statement. I'm happy to see the rise in mental health workers and psychologists and social workers, certainly as our young people are crying for help.
Thank you. Commissioner Patterson?
I have no questions, thank you.
I do believe, and I just want to apologize, that Commissioner Simmons just tapped me and we'll wrap up with you. She has a facilities-related question. So I'm going to turn the mic over to her, and then that will wrap up the,
Just, kind of on the back of what Commissioner Santiago brought up around athletics. And so I'm happy that we're growing out, and children, especially our lower grades, are going to be able to be exposed to these opportunities. How, as far as the aesthetics of our facilities and how they function, some of the kids are not attracted to them. So we're talking about school communities demonstrating interest, but if things need to be resurfaced and they're not doing well, and I'll probably put some specifics in the board question log as to what I'm referring to. What are we doing about those type of things that need to give students pride when they're running on a track,
Yeah, absolutely. So if there are specific facilities that need to be addressed, and hence, when we were going through some of the really tough conversations on school reconfiguration and school closures, some of that were how many schools have been renovated? What's the ability for them to be renovated? What's the ability for them to go through facilities modernization programs, right? And we have several of our schools that are next slated to do that. But if there's anything that from a secondary school that we need to look at a track and stuff like that, we could plan that through in a capital improvement. We could see if it's in a capital improvement plan, as well as what's up for facilities modernization. So without having specifics, from our elementary schools to now our secondary schools that will be going through FMP, I think our facilities are going to be top notch, right? And I think we're going to continue to see that our facilities should not be a detractor for students coming to our district, right? Some of the buildings that we've lost, we know that charter schools have picked up, but those are schools that we've said we can't hold into inventory. We don't think we're going to be able to renovate them to the quality that we want to renovate our buildings to. So I'm not sure if that answered, but if there's anything more specific.
I just want to know if
Yep.
anything was in motion, but I'll put the specifics in the
Yep,
question log.
perfect.
Yep.
thank you, Commissioner Simmons. And with that, we're concluding session 2 of the 24-25 budget deliberations. Again, thank you to Dr. Deputy Turner. Thank you to Dr. Peluso and to my colleagues and to our CFO and his team and our state monitor. Have a good night, everyone.